So we are Penn State, and we are back. We are live and living color, audio only, but we're connected back live here on YouTube. I don't know what the issue was there with a buffer disconnect and reconnect, technical difficulties. Um, so I noticed, as I was saying, um, after the game last Saturday, that the last 10, 15 minutes or so got cut off for whatever reason. Um, why, I don't know, but it did a similar thing today, and I don't know if I'll have to see after I get done today, but it did the same thing then as it did, or did the same thing now as it did then. Um, because then, if so, and I didn't realize it, then nothing else this entire fourth quarter and the rest of the third to go, the rest of this game in general would not be on here. Um, so I figured just play it safe. We paused it. We're about 5 minutes behind. They went to commercial break anyway. So we'll get back to live TV here in a minute. But I'll repeat myself a little bit. But if you've been watching this game, been listening along, thank you. Obviously, you should know what is going on right now. But if you don't, UCLA is leading Penn State. It's not as bad as it just was. Because where we left off at was Penn State on defense. Okay. UCLA ball from midfield. And as Penn State had just scored to cut the lead at 27-14, defensively they're making stops now, backing them up, and a couple sacks. All right. And UCLA had a 4th and 25. And this, if Penn State comes back to win this game, this is where it's going to change with the momentum. Special teams today. From a pooch kick that UCLA got 3 points off of, sort of an onside kick early, go up 10-0, to this 4th and 25 play. We're going to go back and watch this. I know this just happened, a couple minutes behind once again. This is UCLA's first punt of the game, I might add as well. And it was blocked by Penn State. Denied Dennis Sutton, here we go, right up the middle. And Liam Clifford chased the ball down, hopped on it, rolled into the end zone, a fumble, scoop, and score on the blocked punt return for a touchdown. And Penn State then kicked the extra point. It's 27-21. And then they went to break. And that's when I paused it and ended the first stream to this game. Here's the second part to it. Hopefully it sticks with it from now until the finish. And we'll go from there. So they show us an aerial shot of the Rose Bowl in Pasadena, San Gabriel Mountains. They're about 6 minutes behind on CBS with Penn State at UCLA. But it's 27-21 as Penn State blocks the punt to get themselves back in this ball game. It's now 27-21. Last Penn State 20-point comeback was in the Big Ten championship game in 2016, in which they defeated Wisconsin, I might add. So, game ain't over until it's over here, but thanks for tuning in and listening. As always, I'm your host, Encyclopedia Sports, Coin Luke 96. Be sure to like, follow, and subscribe on social media. Links in the description below. Thumbs up button, share, chat questions and comments, super chat, super sticker, super like, super thanks. Always greatly appreciated as well, as this video is powered by Rogue Energy, HopeKThrifts, and Dead and Hungry. So be sure to check them out as well. Links also in the description, and be sure to click that first top link also in the description below. It's as good as the QR code that you'd normally see behind me for a in-person live play-by-play watch-along reaction shirt, but audio only here today. And we're only about, like I said, 5-6 minutes behind in watching this game. So please, obviously, no spoilers if anything does happen in these next 5-10 minutes that I did not see yet. But here we go. Come on, defense. Need another fucking stop. 1st and 10, UCLA from the 25-yard line. So we're continuing on from the first stream of this game as the defense trips them up. That is Chaz Coleman, number 19, the true freshman from OHIO. Talked about him over the past month or so. In for Max Granville, who was a true freshman at 17 out of Texas, but injured this year. So Coleman moves on up the depth chart and has been getting some playing time. The Chazmanian Devils, 2nd and 10. And over the middle, it's caught, but only a 2-yard gain before King Mac makes the tackle. Be 3rd down and about 8 coming up here for UCLA. Come on, defense. From the 28, 3rd and 7. Nico going to step up. That's a fucking hold. He literally tackled him. And Nico on a quarterback run, tackle him inside the 30, down to the 20. Come on. Jesus Christ. And more missed tackles by the Penn State defense. A 52-yard quarterback run. He now has over 100 yards rushing today. First and 10, play clock winding down. They get it off, hand off, and Penn State still can't wrap them up. They're going to push the pile and then blow it dead. Come on, man. Second and about a half a yard from the 10.5-yard line. UCLA knocking on the door, looking to extend their lead. They'll run it down to the 5, 1st and goal. First and goal, UCLA. Just as Penn State storms back, the defense, gives up a big play and a, potential scoring drive here for the Bruins. From the 5, 1st and goal. Penn State might have jumped off sides. They let it slide over the middle. It's incomplete. Yeah, now they throw a flag. Now they're going to say pass interference because they missed on the fucking offside. Offside on the defense. Be half the distance. Automatic first down. Just shoot yourselves in the foot some more while you're at it. Come on, defense. First and goal. And even if you hold them to a field goal, you're still on 2 scores at 9. Because that's the thing. You could have kicked it before halftime. You'd still be down 1 score before it's a kick here. Hand off on 1st and goal. They'll get maybe a yard or 2. 2nd and goal from inside the 5. Second and goal. Come on, defense. 3:16 and counting to play in the third. Second and goal from the 1. And Nika going to keep it for himself, and he gets in, touchdown. Gotta be kidding me. What the fuck? They're going to go for 2 to go up 14 at 35-21, as it's 33-21 right now. But then Penn State still needs to score twice to, along with holding them, to just get back out on top, which Penn State technically has not led at all yet today. UCLA going to go for 2 here. So UCLA going for 2 here from the 3-yard line. And they'll motion a couple guys, still an empty set, 5 wide out of the gun. And a false start, back them up. So do they still go for 2, or, they going to kick it now, or what are they going to do? They'll probably just kick it. Yeah. And remember, they missed a field goal. Penn State didn't kick a field goal. Here's the extra point. And it's good. So 34-21. So we'll fast forward here again. And try to get back to live TV. So touchback on the kick. We're 3.5 minutes behind now, with 2:55 to play in this third quarter. Thanks for tuning in and listening. Sorry for the technical difficulties earlier. But we're live and connected and still rolling. First and 10, Penn State. Ball at the 25. Aller going to step up. Run. He's going to tuck it and run, and he gets to midfield. All right, there you go. 25-yard run up the middle, first down. So out of the pistol, they'll run it. And Singleton gets a couple, maybe 4. They'll run it again, and maybe a yard or 2 for Singleton once more. So third down, third and about 5. 3rd and 5. Come on. Got to convert. Ball at midfield. And they'll run it again on 3rd and 5. And it'll be 4th and short. Now you got a decision to make here towards the end of the 3rd quarter. You go for it. I mean, you're down, obviously, but you don't get it. It's like, all right, they got a short field, but then punt field position, they might go score again, and then you're down, the 3 scores you just were before you block the punt and all that. So they will line up to go for it. And they'll toss near side, Singleton, 4th and a yard. They get the 1st down. He gets to the 40. 1st down, Penn State, as we near the end of the 3rd quarter, under a minute to go. Aller looking to throw. Step up, tuck it and run again. Go. He gets 9, maybe 10 yards and a 1st down. They don't have to snap it if they don't want to end the 3rd quarter here. But we'll see if they do. They might. Go and hurry up. 15 seconds with about a 15 second differential between the game clock and play clock. This will be the final play of the 3rd quarter. 1st and 10, Singleton on the run. He gets a yard. So 2nd and 9, they'll switch ends. And that does it for the 3rd quarter, with UCLA leading Penn State 34-21. As I'll fast forward here, and we will get back to live TV to begin the 4th quarter. Start of the 4th quarter, they show the graphic. UCLA leading Penn State 34-21. So a little hiccup there with technical difficulty to end the 1st stream, but we're back up and running here. Continuation on from that to this. Still college football, Penn State to UCLA. Live play, watch along reactions live here on YouTube. So thanks for tuning in and listening. Be sure to like, follow, and subscribe on social media. Links in the description below. 2nd and 9, begin the 4th quarter of play for Penn State. Down 2 scores. Aller going to step up. And high, incomplete, intended for Kyron Hudson, the former UCLA, or USC Trojan, now playing for Penn State at UCLA here today. So 3rd and 9, you would have liked to have got some yardage there to have a 3rd and manageable, but 3rd and 9 coming up. Come on, boys, let's go. Reynolds in motion. Trips far side. They get the snap off. And 3rd and 9, they run a quarterback draw. And he's going to get the 1st down and then some. All right. And he's down at the 2. That looked fucking dead in the water. But he made a play out of nothing. Gets up, talking trash. Chip on his shoulder. Let's fucking go. You got to punch this in and score. You got to continue to cut this lead, man. Out of the pistol, they'll hand off. Fat man, touchdown, Penn State. Let's go. 34 seconds into the 4th quarter, they score again. Another fat man touchdown. Aller has one. They obviously blocked the punt. That's when shit went sideways on my end, but we're back up and running. UCLA scored in the meantime again. So Penn State 34-27. Extra point to come. Remember, they didn't kick a field goal going into halftime. And remember, UCLA got 3 points out of the trickery they, tricked Penn State on. Caught them catnapping off the kickoff after they scored going up 7-0. Wasn't an onside kick. It was more of a pooch, but it still executed and, worked in their favor, and they got 3 points out of it. And, in a one-score game, that's where you're at. Even with as bad as they've looked, they're still in this game. And Barker on for the extra point. And extra point is up and good. 34-28 with 14:26 to go. Need another defensive stop. I'll update some stats here in a minute. Yeah, 3rd and 9, they were on a quarterback draw. Talk about ballsy. But then he got a good one. We'll see in the stats here however long that run just went for. But then one play later, Fat Man with the LA celebration as well. They punch it in, touchdown. They're fighting. They're fighting back, just like they did last week. But they still need defensive stops. Because UCLA is still running the ball well. They're still controlling the clock. Nico's balling out, probably having his best game this season, let alone, best game, since he was putting up, Heisman numbers at Tennessee. And then, the transfer discussion this past offseason, with NIL and all that, and him going back home to Southern California. And then, Tennessee getting a former App State UCLA quarterback to play quarterback for them. But Aller, 10 of 13, 120 yards passing. Touchdown, obviously, to Dinkins. But then Aller had a 27-yard run on that 3rd and 9 quarterback draw. Has 7 carries, 58 yards rushing, leading the team right now. So both quarterbacks actually leading their respective teams in passing and rushing. Nico, 11 of 98. 2 rushing touchdowns. He had 2 passing touchdowns. So he has all their points, and then they have the 2 field goals. Which is the difference in this game. The field goal, they got up 10-0 then after the trickery on the kickoff, and the field goal going into halftime when Penn State decided not to kick it. UCLA still had some time to kick it, and they did and made it. So that's the difference in this ball game, unless, we'd be tied at 28 right now with 14 and change to go. But Penn State has momentum, but they can't let it slip and slide like they did after the blocked punt, and then UCLA is able to, go score and extend their lead before you got to go cut it again. So Aller, 10 of 13, 120 yards and a touchdown, 7 carries, 58 yards rushing. Fat Man, 7 of 44 and 2 rushing touchdowns. Singleton has 10 carries, 40 yards rushing as well. 34-28 your score. And ain't over just yet. So we are Penn State and need a defensive stop. Thanks for tuning in and listening. Be sure to like, follow, and subscribe. Come on, defense. $14:26 to go. 34-28 your score. Both teams have all 3 timeouts and the 2-minute warning. And we'll have a touchback on the kick. Come on, defense. There's the UCLA Bruin mascot. Come on, defense. What do you got? What are you made of? From the 25, 1st and 10, UCLA. And they'll run it. Nico going to keep it for himself, but he tackle for loss of 1. I believe Campbell on the stop once again. Had a ton of tackles last weekend, a ton of tackles today. Yep. Mari Campbell, 24. Second and 11. Come on, defense. Let's go. And they're just going to work clock. I mean, can you blame them? Play clock at 5. They'll snap it. Nico going to step up. And he gets a first down run. More missed tackles by the Penn State defense, but he gets to midfield. Jesus Christ. Just as they get a spark and they score, they can't get a fucking stop then on defense. First and 10, UCLA. And Nico will hand off again. And they'll get another 5-6 yards up the middle. Second down. Got to get a turnover or something on defense here. I mean, punch that ball out, get pressure, force a pick. You know, 2nd and 4 with 12:20 and counting to play. Come on, defense. They need a stop. This time ain't on their side. And Nico looking to throw, and down he goes on the sack, Zane Durant. So 2nd and still about 10, maybe 11. Did I miss a play? Was I thinking of something else? I must have been. They say 3rd and... Well, yeah, because they got the first down, then that's right. They ran a play for a couple yards, and then the sack. So 3rd and 4, which still doesn't seem right, but it's 3rd and 4. Pass, caught, first down. So they'll move the sticks now. Inside the 40, and tick, 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 tick. They'll just continue to work this clock. So 1st and 10 here. Ball 39. And they'll use all that play clock, more missed tackles before DeLuca, Harris, and King Mack make the stop. 2nd down. Second and 6 officially. 10-12 to go. Come on, defense. And you can't even afford, giving up a field goal because you didn't kick it going into halftime. And pressure, and that's another hold, but Nico's pass incomplete. So 3rd and 6 with 9:49 to go. Yeah, you got to even keep them out of field goal range. That's what I said. I mean, you give up a touchdown, you're down 2 scores again, 41-28. You give up a field goal, you're down, 2 scores at, 37-28. That's why. Remember, they already missed a field goal too, even though they made a couple. Come on, defense. From the 35, 3rd and 6. I think they'd be content when they're running the ball. And they will. And it'll be short, be 4th and about a yard. So do they go for it? Do they kick it? But then you got to hope for a miss. Fourth and 1. And they will line up to go for it from the 30. Of course, they jump off sides. God damn it. Unless they say false start. They say offside, of course. 5 yards, automatic first down. Oh my God. Just stupidity. And they're just going to continue to run the ball and work more clock. And, they're in field goal range. They score a touchdown. You're still down 2 scores, with under 9 to go here if they do score. With being down 6 as it is, you didn't kick a field goal, and they run it inside the 20 and pushed out inside the 10. Oh, my God. I said you can only hope for a turnover here. Or obviously a missed field goal if you can keep them out of the end zone. But UCLA 1st and goal at the 8. They'll run it and DDS with a tackle for loss. But tick, 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 tick. 8 minutes to play. Come on, defense. Where you are at? Second and goal. And they'll run it again after working the whole entire play clock. And maybe 3 yards, so 3rd and goal. Watch for a play action pass or a quarterback draw. They'll probably run it again, but I'm telling you, watch for a play action or a quarterback draw. So 3rd and goal here, UCLA. Ball at the 6. Make it the 7. Nico looking to throw. And avoids a sack, and he's going to walk it in. Touchdown. God damn it. 6:41 to go. So, yeah, that's twice now. Just as you get the blocked punt for a touchdown or the offense scores, the defense goes and gives up 2 different touchdowns. And remember, UCLA missed a field goal. You didn't kick one. But regardless of that, you're still down 2 scores here. 40-28 with 6:41 to go. You still have all 3 timeouts, 2-minute warning, but you got to go score and score quick, get the ball back, and score again just to fucking, tie if they go for 2 here and get it. Or, win the game, as there's James Franklin on the sideline with his fucking arms crossed again. But what's new? From the 3-yard line, they're going to go for 2 to make it a 14-point game. And an empty set 5 wide, play clock winding down, they get it off. And pass, of course, caught in the end zone for the 2-point try as he should have been sacked. But 42-28 now UCLA with 6:41 to go. And Penn State needs to score twice now just to tie. With, really no time left, even with the timeouts, 2-minute warning. Yeah, you might as well start writing that fucking buyout check. So they'll go to break, and Penn State can get the ball back, but just they're getting punched in the mouth and only punching back, half the time. So we'll talk about it if we need to talk about it here tonight. And then obviously if I can clip what I'm going to say if I have to say it, and then edit that into a separate video and upload that, then I will do that as well. For potential Penn State coaching candidates to replace James Franklin if they lose this game and decide to fire him, and rightfully so. If they do, you lose at home in double overtime, and then you're going downhill again. Not knowing how to claw back, even though they have at times today. Overall total as a team, it's like enough's enough, because it's the same shit, different day with it. And like I said, they're paying for, with donations and, university money as well, a $700 million stadium renovation. They have $56 million to buy him out, easy. So, like I said, if I got to talk about it, I will. And joking earlier, in the first stream, if I got to make a list, I will. Oh, believe me, I've already had a list. So, 42-28. Thanks for tuning in and listening. It's going to be Penn State ball here, but it just hasn't been their day, let alone the past couple weeks. It'd be nice for a kickoff return, so no time's really going to come off the clock. But nope, touchback. So 1st and 10 here, Penn State. Aller looking to throw, pump fakes, gonna roll back, tuck it and run, and he gets a first down run. All right, 11, 12-yard pickup there. Because the other thing, too, is they lose this game, fall to 3-2. You have a good loss, but then you also have a terrible loss. Like, bad as bad gets. UCLA is one of the worst teams in the country. Dump off, fat man on the catch and run. That, like I said, with the college football playoff, yeah, you can afford 2 losses and still get in. But then you lose here today, you're going to have to run the fucking table. There's no way in hell that'll happen. They'll end up fucking losing again or even twice more with the way the schedule, the way it is. And, yeah, just... if they lose today, the season's over. There's no way in hell you lose to winless UCLA. That they, continue on and, miraculously save the season. It's not like you're going to lose, say you lose to Oregon as they did, beat UCLA, beat Northwestern, whatever. But then you lose to, like, Iowa, Ohio State, Indiana, Nebraska, like somebody along those lines that, okay, you still might be all right, but they lose today, they're going to fall out of the top 25. Easy. So Luke Reynolds over the middle on the catch and run, first down, Penn State. But game ain't over just yet. But like I said, they got to score quick and get the ball back and score again. Aller going to step up. Tuck it and run, stiff arm, gets out of bounds on a pickup of 8. Second and 2. Pass complete for a first down, then a big hit, but hey, first down in the meantime, so they'll move the sticks. Got to score. About what, the 30-yard line, 35-yard line? From the 33, out of the pistol, they'll hand off to the fat man, Katron Allen. He's got a touchdown in every game so far this season, has 2 today. He gets about 5 or so up the middle. 4:44 and counting to play. They gave him 6 officially, second and 4. Aller, far side, out of bounds, incomplete, kind of for Devontae Ross. Third and 4. And guess what? They really haven't been able to convert on third down today, so we'll see what happens here. Dinkins in motion. And they pass complete. Trevor Pena. And he gets down to the 15. First and 10, Penn State. All right, come on, let's go. You're going to have to score quick, like one of these next couple of plays, to be able to potentially get the ball back with time and timeouts, you know, on the plus side of the 2-minute warning. Going in the end zone. Where's the defensive hold? 10 for Hudson, but no penalty on the play. It's a fucking defensive hold on 18. Second and 10. So they took the shot there. We'll see what they do here. And Aller looking to throw again. This side, near side of the end zone. And it's caught. Touchdown. Hudson. 4-11. So, Aller on a rope, went left to Hudson. It's incomplete. They go right to Hudson, and he goes up and grabs it. Former USC Trojan, I might add, up against UCLA today. And Aller with another passing touchdown. 1 in, 2 in. You know, that's a touchdown. And just not on Saturdays, but on Sundays. And, hey, they're still right there in it, man. So kick the extra point with 4:11 to go. Both teams still have all 3 timeouts, 2-minute warning. Penn State here going to kick the extra point. Kicks up and good. 42-35, 4:11 to go. Update stats in a minute. But remember, that's twice in a row Penn State scored. UCLA has gone and scored again. Hopefully third time won't be the charm. Be the charm for the Penn State defense, though, to get a fucking stop. But remember, they didn't kick a field goal going at halftime unless they'd be down 4 right now. UCLA also missed a field goal, you know. So, I mean, it could still be a 7-point game even with Penn State kicking a field goal or, you know, UCLA making that. So that just evens out. It doesn't matter. It's still 7-point games, 42-35. Aller, 15 of 20, $175 and 2 touchdowns. The first to Dinkins. That one to Kyron Hudson, who has 4 catches, 55 yards. Aller has 9 carries, 77 yards rushing. Fat Man, 8 of 50 on the ground with 2 tutties. Singleton, 10 of 40 rushing. Dinkins, 2 of 46 on the score, as mentioned. Luke Reynolds, 3 of 37. Pena, 3 of 15. Angel Rappley had 2 of 14. Fat Man has a catch for 8 yards. Wheatley and Campbell have 10 total tackles. They have 3 sacks on Nico, 1 by Campbell, 1 by Zane Durant, the other by Zariah Fisher. 6 tackles for loss. Yet UCLA, Nico is 16 of 23, 166 yards passing and 2 touchdowns, and has 15 carries, 130 yards rushing, And not one, not two, but 3 rushing touchdowns. He's accounted for all 5 of their touchdowns today. Nico has. And then they have a couple field goals in the for 2. That's how they got their 42. And, shit, as a team, UCLA has, 46 carries for 274 yards rushing. Because Nico's 15 of 130 and 3 scores. Woods is 14 of 63. Thomas is 11.52 and Berger 6 of 29. So Penn State cannot stop the run. UCLA's controlled the clock. But yeah, we're live TV and 4 minutes and 11 seconds to go, and the Penn State defense needs to stop, but then they're still down 7, so they still need to go, score to tie this game up to, maybe back-to-back overtime games here today. Hoping for a win, because it probably should have been a win last week, but they lose in double overtime, and just one of those weeks, and it ain't getting any better today, because they were down, 7-0, 10-0, 10-7 was as close as they got it, and then down, 17, 24, 27-7 at halftime. They start fighting back, but they have yet to lead today. So hopefully the only lead Penn State's getting is hopefully one with one more point than UCLA at the end of this game, and, win's a win then at the end of the day with a win in the win-loss column. But still, yeah, Penn State going to kick off here, 4:11 to go. Both teams all 3 timeouts, 2-minute warning. Just defense needs to stop. You need a turnover, but guess what UCLA is going to do? They're going to run the ball and work clock. And they did that, to a T on their last drive. They worked the play clock, ran the ball, and went and scored. Unless, if they didn't, we'd be tied at, Penn State would have the lead. It'd be 35-34, because remember, they were up 34-28. But then they score and go for 2, and, it's 42-28. Penn State scores here. It's, 42-35 now. Defense needs to stop. They can't allow UCLA, for the 3rd time after Penn State scores off of a blocked punt, 1 touchdown, and then this touchdown to go score again. They got to get a stop if they want to win this game. Fair catch signaled for at the 15-yard line by UCLA. It'll be 1st and 10 for the Bruins. So 1st and 10. Come on, defense. Yeah, Penn State hasn't lost to an unranked team in quite a while. Handoff, and they get to the 31. 2nd and about 4 coming up. So tick, 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 tick. They're just going to work this play clock and not snap it until they have to. Second and 4. Come on, defense. From the 31, 2nd and 4. Handoff. They'll run it again. King Mack and a bunch of other blue and white defenders on the stop. 3rd down and about 2. Maybe. Play of the game here coming up. Yeah, Penn State's won 34 straight against unranked opponents. The last loss was a 9 overtime loss against Illinois in 21. And that's, when the season went down the drain then. Before they went and won the Rose Bowl in 22, and here we are in the Rose Bowl today at UCLA, 3rd and a yard. And they run a fucking wheel. Oh my! Hey, no, he didn't get it. He did not get that. They run a pass to the back in the flat. He's wide open, and he caught it, but the pass was off, and he fell down. He did not get the 1st down. It's 4th and about a half a yard. So what does UCLA do now? Do they still, drain the clock, call a timeout, probably go for it, give Penn State a short field to go tie the game up, or do they punt? They're going to line up to go for it. So do not jump off sides like you did on the last one. They do have to snap it, though, before the 2-minute warning. There's a 2-second differential between the game clock and play clock. They'll go for it, Nico. And no, he didn't get it. Defense makes a stop. So now they got a short field with 2 minutes to go, 3 timeouts, and they need a touchdown to tie the game. And now they have even more momentum. Zakee Wheatley. And Kenny Wosley. Got to score and tie this game up. And give them no time to, go kick a field goal. At this rate, you probably want to go to fucking overtime. But then also, you don't want to go, same situation as last week. You score, you don't want to go for 2, just kick the extra point, you go to OT. Okay? Because then they'll ridicule, and, that'd be a definite, firing offense for as bad as this game's gone for 1. But then you get back, and then you still fucking find a way to lose it because you score and you go for 2 and you don't get it and you lose by 1. I don't think so. Kick the extra point if you score. So 2 minutes to go. Defense got the 1 stop they needed the whole entire game, even though they would have loved to have had, I don't know how many others this entire game. Too many to count. I've lost count. Got to go score. Got to go save the season. Score and tie this game up. And, it ain't over until it's over, though. We know how overtime went last week. So, big defensive stop there by Penn State. So, short field, 1st and 10 when we come back. Ball around 25-yard line or so. We'll see officially where they spotted it, but just need a touchdown. And like I said, kick the extra point. Do not go for 2. But, Jesus Christ, I've probably had, 100 heart attacks since 3 o'clock. When there's a will, there's a way. They need to find a way to tie this game and find a way to win it. So, we'll see here. Just whatever you do, we know how last week's game ended on the final play in double overtime. I'm not going to say it, but don't have that happen again, okay? So 1st and 10 here, Penn State. Ball at the 32-yard line officially. So 2-minute warning already here. Now we got a flag on the play and offside on UCLA, it looks like. Now they say illegal snap on Penn State. Of course they do. But they still got ball 37 now, 1st and 15, but still got 3 timeouts here with the 2-minute warning that we just witnessed because clock's still at 2 minutes because we haven't officially ran a play yet. Come on, let's go. 1st and 15 with 2 minutes to go from the 37. Down 7. They'll fake the run. Aller going to step up. And he gets those 5 penalty yards back, so it's 2nd and 10. Minute 41 to go. Quick bubble screen complete. Singleton got a couple blockers down the far sideline, inside the 20, push out of bounds with a 15. At the 18, they'll say. Now they say officially at the 17-yard line, 1st and 10 Penn State. 1:35 to go. Remember, got out of bounds so the clock stops. They still have 3 timeouts. Out of the pistol. Going left to right. Reynolds in motion. Aller. Gonna in the end zone. Ooh! Intended for Luke Reynolds. A little high, incomplete. 2nd and 10. Remember, last touchdown drive, they went left. It was incomplete. Then they went right to Hudson, and it was caught for a touchdown. Maybe they'll do the same thing, but maybe then UCLA is ready for it this time. 2nd and 10, run the ball, get some manageable, 3rd down. Or fucking throw something over the middle. From the 17, 2nd and 10. They will run Singleton. But he's going to get stuffed and nothing. Nope. God damn it. Third and 11. They'll go hurry up. Quick slant complete. Luke Reynolds. And he's going to be short. So it'll be 4th and about 2. 4th and 3. Minute to go. And here's your ball game. And probably the season. And maybe James Franklin's tenure as the Penn State head football coach. 4th and 2. Ball at the 9. And UCLA going to call a timeout with 39 seconds. So they get set. And they see what Penn State's lined up in and all that. But 4th and 2. Well, they got to get a first down first off rather than scoring. But you still need to score though too. It's just it's been 40 years since the last 0-4 team beat a top 10 team. UTEP beat BYU, who's also fucking blue and white, of course. 4th and 2, and like I said, here's your ball game potentially in the season, and James Franklin's tenure as Penn State head football coach. From the 9, 4th and 2. Aller in the gun, Penn in motion, and nope. Turnover on downs, and Penn State still has 3 timeouts, but that'll do it. And there's James Franklin in his signature pose. Arms crossed, and really not knowing what to think. And UCLA is going to beat Penn State 42-35. Penn State's going to fall to 3 and 2. They'll drop from the top 25 for sure. They'd have to win out to make the playoff. Because, like I said, you had a good loss last week. You have a bad, terrible loss today now against a winless UCLA team. This is most definitely, hear me clearly, most definitely with as, good and bad as it's been. Same shit. Sick and tired of it, blah, blah, blah. A firing offense. They're paying $700 million for a stadium renovation. They can cut a $56 million check to buy his ass out. Fire him. He might get the Lane Kiffin treatment, getting fired on LAX. Timeout Penn State in the meantime. They might fire him when they get home tonight. If he ain't fired tomorrow, just wait until you hear, well, you're going to hear it on social media and everywhere tonight into tomorrow, calling for his head, and rightfully so. So we will get into the discussion, I guess, here after we wrap this up on, who's it going to be? Because it ain't him. It's not. We've been over this time and time again. Talked about it in 20 when they started on 5. Talked about it in 21, when they, started 5-0 and finished 7-6. Yeah, they had a good 22 season, good 23 season, good 24 season. Won the Rose Bowl, went to the Peach Bowl, made the Final Four last year. But like I said last week, we'd find out next week, meaning today, on who they really are and what they're made of. And it starts at the top with coaching. Players got to play, yeah. But UCLA is arguably one of the worst teams in all of college football this year. They're 0-4. It'd be even worse if they came into Penn State and did this. You'd be hearing boos nonstop. Crowd would have emptied out by now. Well, they might have actually stuck around to do something to them. Hell, UCLA might even fucking storm the field. And I mean, 3rd and 11 here. There's still 30 seconds. Penn State needs to get a stop and call their 3rd and final timeout to, still get the ball back with another chance. But if they convert here on 1st down, ball game. They stuff it, so 4th down, timeout. All right, 25 seconds. Yeah, if they take a safety, it goes back to 2 scores. It's a 9-point game, which they can rightfully do. They don't need to punt this and have a Penn State return and, Penn State still to score to tie it. Yeah, if UCLA was smart, they'd run around work clock on this punt and take a safety. As you're already up 7 at 42, 35, you take the safety, you go up 44-35, that's 9 points. That's not 1 score, that's 2 scores. Ball game, And it ties back into with everything I was just saying anyway. So, just pathetic. They should be ashamed of themselves. So, and yeah, they did block a punt too for a touchdown. But we'll see what UCLA does here. Yeah, they're going to take a safety. Yep. And it's, well, shit, not 44-35. It's 42-37 because it's a safety for Penn State. Duh, what was I thinking? But Penn State's still going to get the ball back here off of a punt, at midfield with only 17 seconds and no timeouts. But then a touchdown would win it now. So, I mean, I said what I said. It's right, but I just flip-flopped it. I got the teams mixed up. So UCLA takes the safety. It's 42-37. 17 seconds. UCLA's on to punt again, but this time from midfield. It's a free kick. And then, Penn State, hey, touchdown wins it. But we'll see what happens here. Just don't turn it over, you know? So UCLA kicks off and fielded inside the 10. Corey Smith, 30. 35 out of bounds. They got 12 seconds. No timeouts. And a touchdown wins it. Field goal ain't going to cut it. You need a touchdown. So get the hell out of bounds. Obviously, if you get a first down, clock's going to stop for a second under 2 minutes here, but I'd be shocked if they fucking score. I think everybody's going to be. Aller looking to throw, complete Singleton, he gets out of bounds. And now, nothing really, but it took off time. So 8 seconds, and here's your final play probably. Here's your ball game. And remember, UCLA still has 2 timeouts, so they can still call a timeout if they want. Second and 10 from the 37. Aller, far side, incomplete, out of bounds. 2 seconds. All right, so they'll get one more play out of it, but yeah, Hail Mary, hook and ladder, pitchy woo-woo, whatever the fuck you want to call it. UCLA is going to probably call their third and final timeout, or one of their 2 timeouts, sorry. And it's been 46 consecutive games without losing back-to-back for Penn State, which would have also been the 21 season. Final play of the game. Over the middle, Dinkins back to Hudson, and he fumbles, and that'll do it. UCLA beats Penn State 42-37. They pick up their first win of the season. They're now 1-4. Penn State falls to 3-2 after a back-to-back loss from double overtime at home against Oregon last week in the whiteout, 30-24. And hey, guess what? Another fucking one-score loss, 42-37. And fire James Franklin, fire his ass, get him out of town. Sayonara, see your ass later, pay him the $56 million they owe him, and goodbye. Absolutely pathetic for Penn State football. Like I said, they should be ashamed of themselves. Give credit to UCLA, no doubt. But does James Franklin really get it, as he says? Does he really get it? I don't fucking think so, not at this point. Not at this rate. No chance. As they, of course, celebrate with Zombie Nation. But don't be surprised if he's fired later on tonight, tomorrow. I mean, the season's over. And California love blaring on the speakers as well, but I mean, congrats to UCLA, but James Franklin, I'm sorry, man. Penn State's the nations put up their shit, too long at this rate. Like, enough's enough. It seems like for sure it's run its fucking course. And probably best for, a change on both sides, just a fucking fresh start. But then it's also be careful what you wish for, because they're accustomed to, 10-2 under Franklin for the most part. But remember, they were ready to fire him early, mid-2016, before they went and won the Big Ten. And then they're again ready to fire him after, 20, and then the way 21 ended. But then he signed the extension. for another 10 years. So that's why he's halfway through that of the 10-year, $100 million, whatever it was officially. That's why they're going to owe him the buyout of around $56 million, for the rest of it. But there's been coaches that have been fired who've been paid way fucking more than that, Now, whether or not that school, university's been, fined since then, that's a different story. Because that's the thing of be careful what you wish for. Grass ain't always greener on the other side. But, because that's the thing too. If Franklin does stay, the fucking coordinators will be the scapegoats again, just as they've been in the past. Offensively and defensively. He's been through how many fucking offensive coordinators? And then obviously Brent Pry and Manny Diaz as defense coordinators, they left because they got, head coaching jobs. And Brent Pry obviously just got fired by Virginia Tech. Manny's at Duke. But obviously Tom Allen, not the tool man Tim Allen, but he left for Clemson after a year. So just frustrating. Because like I said, now the season's over. From a good loss to this is a bad, very bad, terrible, awful loss. I don't care if it's by 5 points or not. They're getting their ass kicked until they, were making comebacks. But then, oh wait, just think, they lose by 5. They kick the field goal before halftime rather than going for it. UCLA doesn't kick that field goal. They have the 38 points. Penn State has the 35 before the safety. They got that 4th down stop. Kick a field goal, you're tied, at 38. But no, that's what came back to, the one thing that came back to bite them in the ass. Other than playing like shit, That's why I said you got to give UCLA credit. The thing is, too, you fire Franklin, he'll have a job in, less than a day probably. Somebody would hire him. Because that's the thing with the buyout for any coach. Rather than paying the buyout, unless you want to extend him, you want whoever he's going to go to buy him out, and then you use that money to go hire somebody. Because if you fire him, you got to pay him, and then you got to pay whoever you bring in to replace him. And believe me, I've always kept the list for this jackass. I have. Obviously, JVP 409 forever. We know how that ended. I'm not going there. But then O'Brien's here for 2 years. He goes to the NFL. He's back in college with Boston College. People will say his name for sure. No doubt about it. But, he's from Boston. He's back home. They're so-so right now. And, talk about alignment and leadership and everything like that. Like, nobody at Penn State right now has any connection, to him. And then it's always the guy after the guy, if that makes any sense, to be the guy. Because he had Joe for as long as he did. 409 wins. Obviously, Franklin still has not surpassed Rip Engel to become the second all-time winningest coach in Penn State football history, either now losing 2 in a row. He's still at 104 wins. 104 and 44 at Penn State is James Franklin's record. I don't know, maybe there's somebody that doesn't fucking want him to become the second all-time winningest, coach in Penn State football history. Maybe it's not meant to be. Maybe he's just meant to tie him. You would think surpassing, because remember, Rip preceded Joe. Joe was an assistant under him for 15 years before he got the job in 66, and then was the head coach until 2011. And then O'Brien for 2 years in 12 and 13. When we all thought, Tom Bradley was probably going to get the job, let alone Larry Johnson, after O'Brien left, but then they hired James Franklin. And then even from then until now, the leadership has changed at Penn State from the president to the athletic director. Pat Kraft is not the athletic director that gave James Franklin the extension in 21. That was Sandy Barber. Okay? There's somebody, I'll leave it with a little cliffhanger before I go over stats and scores and then really get into it. But there's somebody Pat Kraft knows from his days at Temple. So I'll leave it at that for the time being. If you know, you know, and I've been saying his name for the past decade. It was really, at it in, late 15, early 16, and then again in 20 and 21. But then timing's everything, So we'll have to see what James Franklin says in his post-game press conference. At this rate, probably not going to be much. Other than that, he gets it. He's probably going to be sorry, blah, 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 blah. Enough's enough, like I said. They're paying for stadium renovation. They have money to write a buyout check and fire him. They do. And, obviously, if I had the $56 million, which I don't, and not a lot of us do, I'd probably do it my fucking self. Because, there are alumni and boosters out there that are going to have that money. Whether they have it by themselves or whether they, are going to, one way or another, put it together and, that's what you get, or that's what you got, here you go, blah, 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 then okay. Because the stadium renovation's being funded by the university, but then by donations. They're still going to raise prices on shit after the fact anyway, so don't be surprised when that happens. It just seems like it's also one of those days in college football that, top 10 teams are losing on the road, I might add, too. So, obviously doesn't help Penn State's case whatsoever. They're definitely going to follow the top 25, no doubt. Because like I said, just with the schedule, you lose a close, hard-fought game against a good Oregon team, a top-ranked Oregon team, I might add, as well. And then you come back and lose like this, from the good loss to the bad loss. This is the fucking nail in the coffin is what this is. Because schedule-wise, I could probably count another 2, 3, 4, potentially, losses if they're going to continue to play like this. Yeah, they'll get Northwestern next week for homecoming. Game's also at 3:30, so be sure to tune back in. We'll see if James Franklin's still the head football coach at Penn State by that point in time or not. And then if he is, because it's a home game, you're going to be hearing a lot of boos if they continue to play like this, no doubt. Then they go to Iowa. That's always tough. Then the bye week. So, if he doesn't get fired this weekend, maybe they wait until after Iowa, and then you get the second bye week, and then, you go from there, because then after that, you're into November, a month from now. But then you got to go to Ohio State. We know how that fucking goes. We know James Franklin against the top 10, let alone top 25. And then you go at UCLA, a winless 0-4 UCLA Bruin team, and you play like dog shit, and you still end up almost coming back to win the game, but you still end up losing. And Then they host Indiana, go to Michigan State, land Grant Trophy there for a rivalry game. Nebraska's coming in for senior day. Remember Nebraska for what I said as well. And then, they go to Rutgers. And there's no Big Ten championship game at this rate. There's no college football playoff unless they would absolutely run the fucking table and blow everybody out in the meantime, because they're not going to be able to get over this UCLA loss unless UCLA finishes like 8-4 and they also win out. Because then maybe they're a good team, but it wasn't like they're undefeated. They're winless. They're 0-4. Like I said, they're one of the worst teams in all of college football this year. Like, I can't remember a worse Penn State loss. You go back probably the 9 overtime Illinois loss, because that was bad. That was just pathetic by both teams, and they still found a way to lose. Like, I'd really have to do some research on and thinking of, yeah, that game was bad, this game was bad. They're on track for potentially, they've already fallen off the cliff. The train's gone off the tracks. We're past that. But how 20 was 0-5 to 4-5 and then 5-0 to 7-6. But I think you're probably on par for that, but it might even turn into a worse situation, and you go back to 0-3-0-4. When it was like 3-8, 3-9, and 4-7 and 4-8. Before they went and won the Big Ten in 0-5, and probably should have been playing for a national championship, but that's neither here nor there. So it's a bad, terrible loss. There's good wins. There's a win's a win situation, but this is pathetic. And obviously nothing was done after the loss last week into this week, because they thought they could just fucking walk in and walk out with a win. But like I said earlier, don't take UCLA for granted. But they couldn't even blow off some steam, for God's sakes. Just piss poor, pathetic Penn State football. So hashtag that while you're at it. Maybe put it in the fucking memo on the check when you pay him the $56 million. Just, like I said, enough's enough. Enough is enough. It's the same old, same shit, different day with James Franklin. Big game James. Well, obviously, this was a big game for UCLA, but not for Penn State, and, we just saw what happened. But big game James, little game James, for what they, thought about UCLA, really. Just walking in and walking out. But no. So you got to give UCLA credit. But, yeah, fire him. Fire his ass. This is just bad. Like, I get the players are playing, but the coach has still got to coach. And, yeah, seemingly, once again, nothing was done after last week's loss, entering today. And they can say, oh, because of the, cross-country trip to LA and this and that. Well, they went to USC last year and won in overtime, I might add. They went to the Rose Bowl game a couple years ago and beat Utah in that, I might add. Other than that, recently, they haven't really played out west. Fiesta Bowl last year in the playoff beat Boise State, but, LA, and the Rose Bowl, let alone the Coliseum. This was just an ass-kicking by UCLA that Penn State... Yeah, exactly. It's beating a dead horse. Yep. And I can't state it enough, because I'm beating a dead horse talking about it. So, it's it's mind-boggling they can, be playing like this, this deep in, to his tenure. Because it's you really look at it now. It's up and down, up and down, up and down. It's been a roller coaster ride, since 2014. And so, I mean, it's just... I mean, it is what it is at the end of the day. And like I said, we'll see what they do. If they fire him, they fire him. If they don't, they don't. But, I mean, you're losing to Oregon, okay, in double overtime. But you lose to UCLA, you're telling me then you're probably going to lose maybe at Iowa, because that game's always tough. You're probably definitely going to lose at Ohio State. You might even lose at home against Indiana. And just all the hype coming in. They obviously still, yes, got to play. And now we're seeing how they're playing. 3-0 in non-conference. They didn't look great, but they, were winning. That's what matters. But then last week, it feels like they're still not over last week's loss. That's what it, I think, really, comes down to with today. And they did it to themselves, and it's just frustrating. That's all it is fucking frustrating. So, I know you guys are probably, wanting to hear who I have written down on this list that I've kept for a while. And there's been names crossed off and added and crossed off and so on and so forth, just because maybe they got a different job or whatever the case may be. Or they're not coaching anymore, or, yeah. Which we'll get into that. But before we really dive into that, let's go over the stats and scores from this game. Congrats, obviously, to UCLA once more. They defeat Penn State 42-37, your final score. Nico just owned Penn State. He did. They had 5 touchdowns. He accounted for all 5. Had 2 passing and 3 rushing. Remember, they had a couple field goals as well. And then the 2-point try. That's how they got their 42. Nico was 17-24 for 166 yards and 2 touchdowns. Also had 16 carries, 128 yards rushing, and 3 rushing touchdowns. Woods, 14-63. Thomas, 16-60. And Berger, 6-29. So they had 166 yards passing, but as a team rushing, UCLA had 53 carries, 269 yards rushing, and 3 rushing touchdowns against the Penn State defense. Gilmer had 5 catches, 79 yards, and a touchdown. TMA, 3-41 and a touchdown. Flores, 4-25. Peterson, 2-10. The kicker had 10 points, for God's sakes. He was 4-4 on his extra points. Remember that 5th touchdown, they went for 2. Let alone, remember, they don't get that 2 as well. They're at 40. Penn State, they get the safety because of the punt. And then, maybe they can tie it with a field goal there at 40, rather than at 38, like I said earlier. Like, there's a couple different scenarios you look back on it on how they could have potentially tied this game up. Let alone won, but they didn't, so that doesn't mean shit. Their kicker was 2-3 on field goals with a long of 54, and he made all 4 extra points. So he had 10 points, and they win by 5, so there's a difference for you, obviously. Drew Aller was 19-26, 200 yards on the dot with 2 touchdowns. Aller, 11-78 rushing. Katron Allen, 8-50 on the ground with 2 rushing touchdowns. Singleton, 11-39. And then Kyron Hudson had 4 catches, 52 yards, and a touchdown. He's the transfer from USC. Dinkins, 3 of 49 and a touchdown. Luke Reynolds had 4 catches, 46 yards. Singleton, 2 of 16. Trevor Payne, 3 of 15. Andrew Rapley had 2 of 14. Katron Allen, 1 of 8. And then Wheatley and Dom DeLuca had 12 total tackles. Amari Campbell with 10. They had 3 sacks and 9 tackles for loss against UCLA, and they lose by 5. Had 1 kickoff return because everything else was touchbacks, and that was at the end of the game there. Barker with 5 points, and they're all on extra points because they didn't give him a chance to kick a field goal. Gabe Owusu punted once for 46 yards. UCLA had a punt. Penn State blocked it, returned it for a touchdown. Felt like they're okay, right back in it. That's where we sort of ended the first part of this and then picked up, the second part of this and then got back to live TV at the start of the fourth quarter after a technical difficulty. But then defensively, just as Penn State would score a couple times, UCLA would go score. UCLA had 22 first downs compared to Penn State's 21. They're 10 of 16 on third down. Penn State was 4 of 9. So put a 0 in there and maybe get a prodigal son to return home to replace James Franklin. I'll keep inching and teasing. But UCLA 0-2 on fourth down. Penn State 1 of 3. Total yards, Penn State had more passing, but less rushing. UCLA had 166 passing to 269 rushing. Penn State with 200 passing and 157 yards rushing. For UCLA, 435 total yards. Penn State with 357. And yeah, you can aim that 357 rather than at the foot, but a little higher and put us all out of our misery with back-to-back losses for Penn State football. 11 total penalties when there's 2 or 3 in the first half. I don't know how many more missed calls, but 5 of 35 against UCLA, 6 of 43 against Penn State. Penn State had the turnover. They only had the ball for fucking 20 minutes today. UCLA had the ball for 39 minutes and 17 seconds. Penn State 20-43. And then they still come up just short, losing by 5. So it's not going to be my kind of Saturday night. Penn State loses for the second consecutive week. UCLA's at Michigan State next week, I might add. Penn State hosting Northwestern for homecoming at 3:30. They still got to take care of business moving forward. But, you go through and go by the play-by-play if I can here. Let's see. Because, UCLA got the ball to begin the game. And went and scored. They're up 7-0. And then they catch Penn State catnapping on the following kickoff. It wasn't an onside kick. It was a pooch kick. And it went 10 yards, so it was legal. And then they recovered. And they went and kicked a field goal. So it was 10-0 before Penn State scored. Katron Allen, his first of 2 rushing touchdowns. 10-7. But then UCLA scored again. And then just prior to halftime, Penn State had a chance to kick a field goal. They went for it, didn't get it. UCLA still had time to go kick a field goal. They did. That was the 54-yarder. He missed from 56. UCLA led 27-7 at halftime. And then scored, 14, 15 points the whole entire second half when Penn State, scored 30. 60-minute game, though, because of the slow start, they end up losing. Among other things, no doubt about it. We've been over it. But then, like I said, just as Penn State would score, from, 27-7 at halftime, Remember, they had the fumble, the missed kick, So still 27-7. They go score. That was a Drew Aller passing touchdown to Khalil Dinkins, 27-14. Penn State's right there. They get the stop on defense, late third quarter. Block the punt. They had UCLA at a 4th and 25, and they blocked the punt. Denied Dennis Sutton on the block, right up the middle. Liam Clifford scooped it up, dove into the end zone, touchdown Penn State. They cut it to 6. Closest they got it, other than being tied at 0 to begin the game. Down 7-0. Down 10-7, which is 3. They had it at 6 there, 27-21 after the blocked punt, which was returned for a touchdown. But then once again, just as they would score, it was like 2 or 3 times a day, just as they would score, the defense would give up a scoring drive. So then they'd be down even more. It's like you're just playing fucking patty cake, and, catch up. You're still where you are. Like you're scoring, but you're not fucking moving. Then UCLA scored again, 34-21. Penn State cut it at 6 again on another fat man touchdown, 34-28, early fourth quarter. But then they allow like a big 50-yard run, and then UCLA capitalizes off of that, and then they go score. And it's 42-28 after the 2-point try. Because like I said, 34-28, Penn State then would score, 35. They would have been up 1 if they would have stopped them, which they didn't. Let alone, the field goals, the missed field goals, not kicking it, all that jazz. It could have potentially been, 38 apiece. It could have been 40 apiece, if UCLA doesn't get the 2, and then, Penn State still gets a safety, which I don't know if they would have done that or not. Because remember, then they had the short field. They got the fucking ball at the 25-yard line, and they can't score off of it. And then, that's when UCLA punted the safety, and it's 42-37. Because remember, Penn State, then with all that rate, would have needed was a touchdown to tie. They couldn't. The turnover on downs, they get the safety, but then, hook and ladder and ball game, it's all she wrote. So, 42-37 is your final score. As they had their chances. They had their chances, no doubt about it. But, UCLA upsets the 7th-ranked no more. They'll fall from the top 25. No doubt. No doubt. If they're ranked tomorrow, they shouldn't be. Hate to say it, but they shouldn't be. But UCLA upsets the 7th-ranked no more Penn State and any Lions. 42-37 is your final score. And with the loss, it truly might have drove the nail in the coffin for James Franklin as the Penn State head football coach. He's 104-44 since 2014 in his 12th season as the Nittany head coach, taking over for Bill O'Brien, who took over for Joe Paterno. Obviously, you had Tom Bradley and Larry Johnson as interims in between, and thought for a time that they were probably going to get the job in 12, let alone 14. But they didn't. University, decided to look elsewhere and hire O'Brien and Franklin. And, O'Brien at the time in 14 was arguably probably the best hire they could have made with who was available, with who, might have said yes, but then turned them down or went elsewhere because of the situation that Penn State was in, following the scandal, and then, not knowing what the NCAA was going to do with sanctions. Obviously, we know how that happened, or what happened there. They came down hard, the 4-year bowl ban that only turned into 2 years, because then they go win the Pinstripe Bowl at the end of the 14 season in Franklin's first year. But O'Brien, even at 8-4 and 7-5 and 12 and 13 officially, they weren't bowl eligible. Even though they were bowl eligible, they couldn't go to a bowl game because of the sanctions. And then obviously all the scholarship loss and money here, money there. Time's come and gone. We move on. We are Penn State. It's awful for what happened. The university did Joe dirty by firing him the way they did, by delivering an envelope to his house with a number on a sheet of paper for him to call, in which he did, and then they fired him over the phone. And then Sue called back and said, for everything that Joe Paterno did for the Pennsylvania State University, you owe him more than that. But the Board of Trustees fired him, hired Bill O'Brien. There was talk in 2012 that Penn State was going to hire Urban Meyer, who had just retired, technically, in quotes, if you will, as he's done a couple times in his career, from Florida the year prior. Which, remember, Florida, at the end of the 2010 season, had beat Joe Paterno and Penn State in the Outback Bowl. And McGloin had threw for like 100 interceptions in that game. But that's neither here nor there. As he was, a walk-on, freshman at the time. And obviously got the starting quarterback gig when O'Brien took over in 12, before Hackenberg was a starter in 13 under Bill. And then Hack in 14 and 15 under Franklin, before Trace McSorley took over. But the story goes, Urban was literally this close, like inches away from signing a contract to become the new Penn State head football coach to replace Joe Paterno going into 2012. But remember, he's an Ohio guy. Jim Tressel, Ohio State just had their situation with the tattoo scandal. Ohio State was also opened. Jim Tressel's now the lieutenant governor of the state of Ohio, I might add. Urban's working for Fox because he retired after the 18 season, after winning the Rose Bowl against Washington. Ryan Day took over, and they're coming off the national championship last year. Franklin only has defeated Ohio State once. Brian couldn't beat him at all. Joe did a handful of times. The thing is, I understand. People will say, well, from way back when till now, times have changed for one. Games changed as well. But, Penn State had a couple undefeated seasons in the late 1960s, early 1970s that they weren't national champions, even though they won all their games. Because back then, they didn't have, 1 versus 2 or, the BCS, let alone the college football playoff. At 4 teams, let alone 12 teams. So they just would match up the 2 best teams they thought, let alone the fucking president at the time, would decide who he thought was the fucking national champion. Joe told fucking Nixon to shove it when he called him the one time, which is a true story. But regardless, I'll digress. Anyways, with winning, losing again, similar, but not, just depends. It all depends on the situation. It always does. That's life. So anyways, after Joe was fired, it's like, well, who are they going to hire? And like I said, I thought it was going to be Tom Bradley at the time. I did. I think a lot of people did. Because what I was getting at is, as I said earlier, you don't want to be the guy to follow the guy. You want to be the guy after the guy who follows the guy, which sort of would be Franklin, Because what I'm getting at is, too, he's going on, he's in his 12th year, but Joe, remember, never won a national championship until, his 15th season. Even though, with what I just said, they had undefeated teams prior to that, right when they took over and shit, but they weren't national champions. So you can look at it one way or another and, decipher that and decide for yourself. We know the history. But it seems like that with Franklin, he's not the guy after the guy of the guy. From Joe to O'Brien to Franklin, maybe got to hand off the baton to somebody else. So, $56 million buyout for James Franklin. He was at Vandy for 3 years before he came to Penn State. So he has more than 104 total wins. I believe it was like 23-11 or something along those lines at Vandy, if I'm not mistaken. But at Penn State, he's 104-44, and they're now 3-2 here in 2025. Another one-score loss. They've had 5 losses since the start of the 24 season. All have been by 1 score. You can make the argument, I've heard it before, James Franklin is what Marvin Lewis was to the Cincinnati Bengals. Because since he was, and you could look at Mike Tomlin with the Pittsburgh Steelers right now. Pittsburgh's not firing Tomlin, though, no doubt. As a Pittsburgh Steelers fan myself, no. But James Franklin at Penn State, it just, like I said, it feels like, this 12-year run might have just run its course, and time to move on and time for a change on both sides. And with Penn State once again currently ongoing, it's not going to be finished until the start of the 27th season. So maybe they let it ride out, the rest of the year, maybe go into next year, see what happens. But then since the stadium's going to be done going into 27, maybe then after that, if they don't make a move now or at the end of the season or anytime next year, after next year, depending on what happens, maybe then to get somebody to come in just to start fresh then with the whole stadium going to be the way it is. But then if you're going to make the move, then why don't you make it now? When it's the same shit as it's been and probably going to continue to be. They just can't get over that fucking hump of, one-score games because they always end up losing them. Let alone, he always has his arms crossed on the sideline with just a fucking look on his face that he has no idea what the fuck just happened, no idea what to do about it, and just, he says he gets it. It's like enough with the bullshit comments, after stuff like this. That's why I said, we'll see what he says. Because if he says the same old, it's just going to make everybody even more pissed off. And, calling for his head. And I mean, rightfully so. I mean, he's been good to Penn State, yes, so thank you in the meantime for winning as much as you have. But then maybe, as he said Penn State was his dream job, when he got the gig. Well, yeah, no shit. I would think Penn State is anybody's dream job in all of college football because they're one of the blue bloods with Ohio State, Michigan, USC, UCLA, for instance, Texas, Florida, Miami, Florida State, Notre Dame, to name a few. Okay? Nebraska. Remember Pat Kraft, Temple, Nebraska, Penn State alumni. We're getting there. But, maybe, it's just, once again, time for a change on both sides of it. From Penn State to James Franklin to Penn State. Not that he's going to resign or, all right, I'm going to go to a different job. Well, if he goes to a different job, then they're buying him out from Penn State, and then Penn State would use that money to go hire somebody else. But I can guarantee you, he ain't going to go down without a fight. If Penn State's going to want to fire him, they're going to have to fire him because he ain't going to want to fucking leave on his own accord. And that's where it gets messy. And then it's he said, she said, it's petty this, petty that, and because there's money involved, just like there is for anything else. And $56 million is a lot of money. But like I said, Jimbo just got fired by Texas A&M for like $80 million a couple years ago. $56 million is the buyout. $56 million is the buyout, for anybody wondering. Around 56 million, yes. Give or take a couple here or there. Penn State really doesn't release their, contract info to the public. It's if it leaks out, it gets out, it's out there then at that rate. And that's the number that's been seen a few times from a few different sources. So take it for what it's worth, but I've seen $56 million is the James Franklin buyout for Penn State. So, because as I was saying, if you fire Franklin, you're going to have to pay him the money, and then he's going to laugh to the bank, and then he might go win somewhere else. That's what I was getting at. Maybe, James Franklin and Penn State aren't the right fit. Maybe James Franklin and somebody else are the right fit, and Penn State and somebody else is the right fit then, at that rate. So, but like I said, grass ain't always greener on the other side. Be careful what you wish for. So, yeah, if they fire him, they'll have to buy him out, pay him, and then he'll get the money, go elsewhere. And, I mean, there's going to be a stipulation in the contract that then if he does go elsewhere, probably, that Penn State probably wouldn't owe all of that. That's normally how that works. Because then, that school, whoever would be hiring him, would pay some of that. Not all of it, obviously, though. But that's the thing. If he would leave on his own accord, whoever would hire him would buy him out, whether it be that full 56 or around that number of as well or not. There's probably a, quote in there about that as well. That Penn State would then you'd be able to use that money to then go hire somebody else. Okay? So, as a Penn State fan my whole entire life, I've seen enough of James Franklin as the head football coach of the blue and white Penn State Nittany Lions. So, obviously, after Joe Paterno, and after, Bill O'Brien in 2011, 2012, and then 2013, 2014, at the end of the 11 season for 12, and at the end of the 13 season for 14. Here we are, 10-4 there, big buddy. It's October the 4th, 2025. I talked about this at the end of the 15 season, mid-16 season, mid-20 season after they started 0-5, and then at the end of the 21 season as well. If you don't believe me, thanks for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe. Go check out old videos. Content's there. Think I'm lying. I'm not. So this would technically be the 5th time I brought this up about Penn State potentially firing James Franklin and hiring somebody else. But into 2025, this ain't 2012 or 2014 anymore, okay? So it ain't going to be Kirk Ferentz from Iowa, even though he just became the Big Ten all-time winningest coach. It ain't going to be Pat Fitzgerald either, former Northwestern head coach, as he was fired before the start of the football season a couple years ago with a scandal. And it ain't going to be the current Utah head coach either, and Kyle Whittingham. Dan Mullen's name came up in both 12 and 14. He's from Philly. At the time, he was at Mississippi State. And then remember, he went to Florida before they fired him. They've been having trouble with Billy Napier. That's the thing. Be careful what you wish for. Grass ain't always greener on the other side. But then Mullen got fired by Florida, worked for ESPN the past couple years, and then just took the UNLV gig out in Sin City. But then, still, it ain't 2012 or 2014. Can't state that enough. So Gary Patterson was at TCU, but they fired him for Sonny Dykes, and he hasn't coached since, even though he's been an assistant at Texas and a couple other places. And Chris Peterson was at Boise State at the time before he went to Washington. And then remember, in 16, his Washington Huskies got it in the 14 playoff over the Big Ten champion Penn State Lions. As Penn State got screwed. What's new? But then remember, they got blown out by Alabama. But then he retired from Washington. Washington's been through a couple head coaches since him. He's working as an analyst for Fox Sports. And, they fired the coach that replaced him. DeBoer took over. Then he left for Alabama. And then they have Jed Fish now. And they came in for the whiteout last year. So, it's not going to be Al Golden either. Okay? Because from him at Temple and him at Miami, he hasn't had a head coaching job in 10 years. He's worked his way back up as an assistant in college, most recently Notre Dame as defense coordinator the past couple years, but he's back in the NFL. He's worked for the Lions, and he's back with the Cincinnati Bengals as their DC. It ain't going to be Al Golden, even though in 14, I guess it came down for Penn State between James Franklin and Al Golden, and they gave Franklin the job over Al Golden. But maybe now it's time to give a former Letterman, a former alumni, the Penn State job. So, with all that being said, it ain't going to be Tom Bradley or Larry Johnson either, as they were, defensive assistants at that time. So, it sure as hell ain't going to be Andy Kotelnicki and Jim Knowles, this year's offensive and defensive, coordinator. And then there's always the, at least there was, the former NFL coach that hasn't coached in a couple years to get back into coaching and go to the college level. Look at Bill Belichick. He took a year off from the NFL, went to North Carolina, and how's that working out in Chapel Hill? Not good. So it ain't going to be former Steeler head coach Bill Cowher, let alone former Raider and Buccaneer head coach John Gruden. So I don't want to hear any of that bullshit. Even though Cowher did win one for the thumb for the black and gold. Here we go, Steelers. Here we go. They're off this weekend. I'll have more Penn State and Pittsburgh Steelers play watch along reactions next weekend, so be sure to tune back in. We'll see if I'm in a better mood than I am right now. I would welcome a Bill O'Brien return, but it's not going to happen, so don't get your hopes up. And then you look at all the James Franklin assistants that have moved on to become head coaches. Joe Moorhead went to Mississippi State, got fired, worked his way back up as an assistant. He's not even winning at Akron right now. Okay, so no. Brent Pry left for Virginia Tech, just got fired. Like I said, over the past month or so. After that, maybe for Franklin to bring him back on board as like an analyst or something like that. But that ain't going to happen. Not at this rate, especially if Penn State would fire James Franklin. Ricky Arani left for Old Dominion. He actually beat Virginia Tech, getting Brent Pry fired by the Hokies. Charles Huff was at Marshall, now at Southern Miss because of, the shit that went on there last year. Everybody's going to harp and hound for Manny Diaz. I don't know. Jury's still out. He won, but he didn't win at Miami. Franklin hired him as the DC. Penn State's always been known, for the run game and the Penn State defense, because Penn State is linebacker you. But I still think there's, better candidates out there than Manny Diaz, but we'll see. Um, also with 2012 and 2014, it's not anymore. It's 2025. So it ain't going to be Mark Stoops at Kentucky. It ain't going to be Troy Calhoun at Air Force. It ain't going to be Greg Schiano at Rutgers. A couple other names. I mean, Lane Kiffin's name would probably get brought up. No thanks. I don't want all that, you know, even though his career's been all over the place and he's worked his way back up, actually beat Penn State in the Peach Bowl with Ole Miss a couple years ago. All that, hoopla and, the spectacle, with who Lane is, no. Eli Drinkowitz from App State to Missouri, his name's getting brought up for bigger jobs. No thanks on him either. Hugh Freeze was at Ole Miss, the scandal there. Worked his way back up with Liberty, now at Auburn, no. Kalen DeBoer's name would be interesting if he was still at Washington, but he already left UW for Alabama, so, and they're calling for his head down there too. So, PJ Fleck's a car salesman, just like James Franklin, so no thanks. That's the thing with Franklin. He's always been a better recruiter than he has been an in-game coach. And I think a lot of people can agree on that. I think PJ is going to be in contention for the UCLA job because his name got brought up for that a couple years ago after Chip had left. But then they hired a Sean Foster, and then that's gone south because they've already fired him. Lance Lightboyd was at, I believe it was Wisconsin Whitewater before he was at Buffalo. Now he's at Kansas. Chris Kleiman won at North Dakota State, but having some trouble at Kansas State. Dave Doran's a former Big Ten assistant at Wisconsin. He's been at NC State for a while. But I still think all of them would be, no's. But just overall names to know. Obviously there's been talk about Dabo at Clemson. He's been there for as long as he has. He's won a couple national championships. And, he said earlier this year that, if they want to fire me, let them all go elsewhere and win. But Dabo ain't leaving Clemson. I'm sorry to break it to you. He's just not. And I'd really be surprised if he did. But if he did, I don't think he'd be coming to Penn State. He'd be staying down south somewhere. Obviously, as an Alabama alum, they'd want him in Tuscaloosa if they'd move on from DeBoer. Because Kalen DeBoer's buyout's like a good $20 million more than what Franklin's is. Obviously, because he just signed it. He's only been there a year and a half, 2 years. Make sure I didn't miss any names there. Before I get into the top, echelon of top 5 candidates, I think could be, in contention for Penn State if they would fire James Franklin. Along with a couple wild cards. Like I said about Urban Meyer, I guess was this close to, taking the job in 14, or in 12, excuse me. But then, went to Ohio State. They went to the national championship in 14, the first year of the 14 playoff. Beat Oregon, who are now obviously conference opponents in the Big Ten. But from undefeated in 12, they had a good 13 season, played in the Orange Bowl against Clemson, I might add. But then, they won the national championship. Urban probably could have won a couple more in Columbus. But they came up short, obviously, a couple times. And obviously then they still won versus 2. So That's the thing, college football nowadays, you can lose up to 2 games and still make the playoff. 3, 4, you're done. But 2 losses for Penn State from Oregon to UCLA, it's a total top and bottom end of the spectrum. Good loss, bad loss. With especially the rest of the season to go, there's going to be no getting over it and making the playoff this year. And that's what I said. It's just seemingly potentially time to move on because the season's over now at this rate, especially the way they played. So, I mean, Urban since Ohio State, because remember, he was at Bowling Green, was at Utah, won there. Probably could have won a couple national titles at Ohio State. Did win 2 and 3 years in Gainesville at Florida with the Gators, with Chris Leak and Tim Tebow and everybody that played for him down in the swamp. And then potentially, like I said, it was going to be a Joe Paterno replacement at Penn State. Was this close, from what I've heard, to taking the job? But then, whether he got cold feet, whether Penn State got cold feet, I don't know. But as I said, though, remember, Ohio State was also opened after Jim Tressel, and then he goes to Ohio State. And was there from, 12 to 18. There's always been something about Urban, though, off the field that comes up. And so it's like, all right. But yeah, he's been working at Fox ever since. He's on Big Noon Kickoff. So, his name's definitely going to get brought up, but it ain't going to happen. I'd be completely shocked if it did. Along with Nick Saban, former Toledo head coach, who then was an assistant under Belichick in Cleveland with the Browns, coached in the Big Ten at Michigan State. Coached against Paterno and Penn State in the mid to late 1990s before we went to Baton Rouge and took over LSU. Won a national championship there. Went to the Miami Dolphins for a couple years, unless he'd probably have more wins in college football right now, sitting at just shy of 300. Because then after he got fired by Miami, he went to Alabama. Was there from 2007 until just 2 years ago with NIL coming into play. Decided to retire. He's working for ESPN right now on College Game Day. Obviously he's from West Virginia. Always had mired Joe Paterno, so he says, from interviews that I've seen. But then people will bring up the wins record. Saban gets back into coaching. Well, potentially, could pass the 409. He'd still have to coach for another, 10, 12 years. And he's 72, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, 74, 75. So, I mean, Nick Saban, arguably, they say, is, the greatest college football coach of all time. But Penn State, we beg to differ with Joe Paterno with 409 wins all at one school from 1966 to 2011. Saban obviously did it at a couple different stops. That's what Belichick's trying to win at the college level now after he, won at the NFL level for as long as he did, but that's really not working out right now. Who knows about the future? If he even lasts, because who knows, he might want to go back to the NFL after this year, but that's neither here nor there. But yeah, I would for sure love Nick Saban in Happy Valley, but reality will set in and it just ain't going to happen. And I would be completely shocked if it did. I would love it, but I would be shocked if it did. So if they obviously would, fire James Franklin, you got to definitely kick the tires on both Nick Saban and Urban Meyer. Just because they've won, I mean, 10 national championships between the two of them combined? At 4 different stops? So, and the thing is, too, remember, go back to the end of the 04 season, Penn State thought about moving on from Joe then. They didn't. 05 was what it was, so he, last until they fired him. Probably should have been playing for a national championship in 05 and 08 for that matter, but the 1-second game 20 years ago at Michigan, they only lost before they beat Florida State triple overtime in the Orange Bowl. The Iowa loss in 08 in Iowa City against the Hawkeyes on the game-winning field goal. The one loss that season as well. They finished third in the rankings, each year. Unless they'd been playing 1 versus 2, let alone if there was a 14 playoff, 12-team playoff, then they would have been in then as well. But obviously that's not how it went. But that, you remember, Saban was at LSU early mid-2000s and then went to the NFL to the Dolphins. It's like, well, if he would have lasted in Miami a little bit longer, let alone not taking the Alabama job when he came back, or lasted in the NFL until he did, and then Joe only lasts, not as long as he did. It worked out the way it did, and, 409 forever. But then maybe there would have been a year, somewhere, in between that, point A could have meant point B, if you catch my drift with, that potentially happening. But that's not how it worked out either. So, yeah. I'd for sure see, if, they'd be interested if that would, come down to it. But it's just not going to happen. Those two aren't going to happen. So we got some updates on a buyout number. Because Franklin, at the end of the 2021 season, he signed a new 10-year extension. And then if the university were to fire him without cause, Penn State would owe Franklin his entire base salary, which is $8 million annually. Or excuse me. His base salary is $500,000, but his supplemental pay is $6.5 million, and then a life insurance of $1 million. So it equals out to the base of $8 million, multiplied by the number of years remaining, which it's 25, but then that goes, to 31 because this is the 4th year of the 10. They would owe him 7 years worth of salary, and then basic math, multiply it back in elementary school, 8 and 7 is 56. So that number is correct. They would owe him $56 million if they'd fire him now or at any point in time from now until New Year's Eve. If they waited until January the 1st, they would owe him only $48 million. So what the fuck is $8 million from now until New Year's? If you're going to fire him, fire him. Yeah, it is a big number, but obviously Nittany Nation fans are going to be, calling for his head, and rightfully so, the way they've been playing. Because enough is enough. So those were my 2 wild cards that I just named, okay? From Nick Saban to Urban Meyer. But my top 5, and I'll work my way down from 5, and then the big reveal at number 1. 5 would be the current South Carolina head coach, and Shane Beamer, son of Frank, who was the longtime Virginia Tech head coach. He's got South Carolina in a good spot. Winning the SEC with Carolina is hard to do. Beamer ball, if you will. But remember, Virginia Tech's open right now, too. And I have recently been quoted saying that I think Beamer is going to be going to Blacksburg. So you can cross him off the list. 4 would be Matt Campbell at Iowa State. He's been in Ames for quite a while. after being the head coach of the Toledo Rockets in the MAC. His name has come up for a lot of other notable jobs in college football, including the Big Ten, but he stayed put with the Cyclones. So I don't know if he'd really ever decide to move on. Or if he does, he might be waiting for Kirk Ferentz to retire at Iowa, to leave Iowa State for Iowa. But in the way college football is nowadays, yeah, Iowa State lost at Cincinnati earlier today, I might add. You have Matt Campbell at Iowa State, that he just might be content at staying at Iowa State with, okay, you're paying the players, you got the alignment you want, and let's just go keep winning and make the playoff here. So Shane Beamer would be 5. Matt Campbell would be 4. Obviously, I named off everybody else who I've already named off, plus the wild cards of Nick Saban and Urban Meyer that flat out aren't going to happen. I know they're not, but it doesn't hurt to throw their name out there. I've seen crazier shit happen, but, this is reality. This is life. This ain't a video game. Like I said, I would welcome it, and be surprised if it did happen, but it ain't going to happen. Number 3. From Indiana University of Pennsylvania to Elon to James Madison, Kirk Cignetti's at Indiana right now, and he has the Hoosiers hooing. The Hoosier hospitality in Bloomington, he's got that edge to him. He's got that cockiness to him, yes, that some Penn Staters might not like. But Kirk Cignetti wins. Google him. Okay? So Kirk Cignetti would be 3. And then 2 would be who beat Penn State this time a week ago, and Dan Lanning and the Oregon Ducks. So Dan Lanning at 2. But talk about the sport of college football right now, and NIL and money. Oregon's Nike. Oregon has that Nike money. And Penn State's going to be leaving Nike for Adidas, I might add, next summer. So that might throw something into, we're making a move here, doing this, doing that. And, they just want to get everything aligned again, realigned. And maybe it's somebody that is Nike, Adidas. Coaches don't care. They just want to coach, get paid to do it, but go win football games. And, Phil Knight made a tremendous hire with Dan Lanning. He's a former Saban and Kirby Smart assistant at both Alabama and Georgia. And, him being the defense coordinator for the national champion Georgia Bulldogs a couple years ago ultimately got him the Oregon job. He has Oregon in a damn good spot from the Pac-12 to now the Big Ten. Oregon won the Big Ten in their first year in the conference last year, for God's sakes, beating Penn State, I might add. Before, obviously, they got blown up by the eventual national champion Ohio State Buckeyes in the Rose Bowl. So Dan Lanning would be 2. But then number 1 would be Penn State alumni, former linebacker for the blue and white. He's actually a former UCLA assistant, I might add. But former head coach at Temple, former head coach at Baylor, obviously left Waco for the NFL, for the Carolina Panthers, got fired. And now back in college, as he's been in Lincoln, Nebraska, for the past couple years with the Nebraska Cornhuskers. And I've been saying Matt Rhule's name for Penn State for the past decade. I have. Because you remember at the end of the 2015 season for Penn State, another 7-win season under James Franklin. And it's like, who are they going to potentially fire if they fire Franklin then, because O'Brien was gone, and well, maybe it's a Penn State alumni if it ain't somebody else. Because remember, Al Golden was at Temple, but then went to Miami, but then he got fired at the end of the 15 season. So it wasn't going to be Al Golden. It's you look at Temple then still. Matt Rule, who was an assistant under Al Golden at Temple before he got the job. And then, left Temple after... Remember, they beat Penn State to start the 2015 season off in Philly at the Link. And then that was probably Temple's best year they've had in quite a while. I think there was some talk, too, with him in 16, potentially still coming to Penn State, because Penn State was still in a position... Remember, they were 2-2 going into October of that year, 9 years ago. And I remember eating McDonald's, and they beat Minnesota in overtime. Saquon Barkley had a rushing touchdown. Don't remember don't ask me how I remember this, but I just do. I just have one of those minds. I remember shit you're not supposed to remember. And I have photographic memory, for that matter. But anyways, because remember, they lost to Pitt, and they got their ass kicked up in Ann Arbor against the Wolverines in the big house up against that team up north, Michigan Wolverines. I have said, I've quoted saying, I truly believe, and I still do, that if they didn't beat Minnesota in overtime in 2016, that Franklin would have been fired then early into his third year. Who knows if that blocked field goal return for a touchdown against Ohio State ever happens then, a couple weeks later. But they beat Minnesota in overtime. They beat Ohio State. They win the Big Ten that year. Yeah, they go lose the Rose Bowl to USC. And at the time, highest scoring Rose Bowl of all time. That's been surpassed now. But, from then until 20, they were having, good seasons. Still nothing, because remember, James Franklin has been quoted saying himself, good, great, we're not elite. Well, yeah, surely, no shit. With the way, they've been playing. But then I brought up Matt Rule's name again. In 20, because backtrack a couple years though, at the end of the 16 season, Rule left Temple for Baylor. It's like, well, would he have left Temple for Penn State at the end of the 16 season going into 17? If it was open. Who knows? Nobody's going to know, because that's not how it happened and worked out, because Penn State did beat Minnesota in overtime. They did beat Ohio State. They won the Big Ten. And then since then, the rest has been history. But then, remember, Penn State started 2020, the shortened, conference-only COVID season, after the Big Ten wasn't going to play, and then they decided to play, and because everybody else was. And then they don't start until, late October. They start 0-5, and coincidentally, that fifth loss, or the fourth or fifth loss, one of the two, was coincidentally at Nebraska, okay? And where's Matt Rule at right now? Nebraska. They hosted Michigan State earlier today. And at this rate, yeah, the recap and the stats and scores and the preview. Obviously, yeah, we did stats and scores for this game, but a recap and a preview of other college football games and scores, that's out the fucking window. We'll get back into that next week. So sorry about that, but stay tuned. There's more to discuss, obviously, in the world of college football, but for Penn State. But I brought up Matt Rule's name in 20. But remember, at the end of the 19 season, Baylor had, made a New Year's Six Bowl. And then he went to the NFL. He went to the Carolina Panthers. And he was in his first year down in Charlotte. Obviously, he was there a couple years. Didn't work out. He got fired. And then from the rest of that year on, he didn't do anything, but then got hired by Nebraska a couple years ago. And he's been in Lincoln since at Memorial Stadium. And so Matt Rule would be my number one choice. Dan Lanning would be 2, Kirk Cignetti 3, Matt Campbell 4, Shane Beamer 5, and then my 2 wild cards obviously would be Nick Saban and Urban Meyer. O'Brien ain't coming back. It ain't 2012 or 2014, so it ain't going to be Kirk Ferentz, Pat Fitzgerald, Kyle Whittingham, Dan Mullen, Gary Patterson, or Chris Peterson. It ain't going to be any former assistants at Penn State that moved on. And then brought up a couple other college coaches currently, but I still don't think it's going to be them either. If they were, they haven't officially, but if they were, Penn State that is, to fire James Franklin, $56 million buyout. Those would be my top 5, and a couple wild cards. Wild cards: Nick Saban and Urban Meyer. 5, Shane Beamer. 4, Matt Campbell. 3, Kirk Cignetti. 2, Dan Lanning. And number 1, bring the prodigal son home. We are Penn State. Matt Rule. From Temple to Baylor. I mean, if he can win at Temple and Baylor, I mean, he's starting to win in year 3 here at Nebraska. That's the thing with Matt Rule in year 3s. That's when he wins. Obviously, the NFL doesn't work out for everybody. There's college coaches that go to the NFL, and I mean, it works, but it normally doesn't. And then there's also, NFL coaches that go to college and it works out, but then it also doesn't. There's only a couple that have won titles at both levels. Normally you're signing your death wish when you go from one place to the other, from that level to the next. But I have Shane Beamer at 5, Matt Campbell at 4, Kirk Cignetti at 3, Dan Lanning at 2, and Matt Rule number 1. If Matt Rule can win at Temple and Baylor, it didn't work out in Carolina with the Panthers, once more in the NFL, and he's winning, for the most part, at Nebraska right now. He's getting there. Matt Rule can easily win at Penn State. And then there's a connection with Matt Rule and Pat Kraft. You want to take a guess what it is? What it was? Pat Kraft was the athletic director at Temple when Matt Rule was the head coach. So, Pat Kraft, current athletic director at Penn State. We know how life is. It's all about connections. And obviously taking it one day at a time, and money obviously involved as well. But if Penn State were to fire James Franklin, those would be my potential candidates. So I'll leave it at that. But we are Penn State. Fortunately, another loss, devastating loss. But what can you do? It is what it is at the end of the day. Because once again, we're not coaching, we're not playing. We're sitting here talking, analyzing, having a discussion, celebrating our fandom, as the nation does, let alone any team you're a fan of at any level of sport, any sport for that matter. But being fans of the blue and white Penn State and the Lions. So we are Penn State, and in the meantime, that'll do it for myself, your host, Encyclopedia Sports, Coy and Luke 96. Thanks for tuning in and listening from the first part of this live play watch along reaction stream to this now second part of it due to a technical difficulty in the middle, but we still finish at the end of the day. And thanks for tuning in and listening. Let me know in the comments below what you think. And also be sure to like, follow, and subscribe on social media if you haven't done so already. Links also in the description below. So, yeah, that'll do it. We are Penn State. We are Penn State. We are Penn State. Thank you. And I'll say it for everybody, even though you should be saying it right now yourself. You're welcome. So, we are